Hello, everyone. Today we will be looking at the Black Death. The Black Death is just one of the few challenges that Europe faced in the late Middle Ages. And as we start our time talking about those challenges, I did want to start with the Black Death itself. The Black Death is one of the most significant challenges that Europe faced during this time period because it affected society in so many ways. Today we are going to look at the impact of the Black Death, the spread of the Black Death, and some of the lasting effects of the disease. Starting out with just some background information on the topic, the Black Death is a crisis that struck the people in Europe during the time of the Hundred Years' War. Now, the Hundred Years' War is one of those other challenges that we are going to talk about that Europe faced during the late Middle Ages. The Black Death itself was a devastating plague that swept across the continent of Europe between 1347 and 1351. Now, that is a span of just 4 years. In 4 years, the Black Death did an incredible amount of damage. Historians are still unsure what the disease was, or even if it was a single disease. There is a theory out there where historians say that the Black Death actually took the form of two different diseases. One was the bubonic plague, which is what most of you guys have probably already heard of. This is a disease that was spread by fleas living on rats and other animals. Those infected fleas would then latch themselves to humans and spread the disease that way. The pneumonic plague was the other form of the disease that historians theorize. This was spread through air from person to person. So think about like the common cold, flu, diseases like that, or illnesses like that we have today and how they spread. There is a discussion question that I would like you guys to check out on that particular topic. Please make sure that you fully answer each part of the question using the Canva whiteboard link you see on this slide. Next, we want to talk about the origins of the Black Death in Europe. It all started in 1346. The plague struck Mongol armies laying siege to a Black Sea port. At that point, infected rats and fleas made their way onto the ships, and infected fleas bit humans, transferring the disease. Merchants were primarily responsible for spreading the disease throughout Europe because they traveled, and as they traveled to trade, the plague quickly spread throughout Europe with them. The coastal regions in Europe were affected first, and then the disease moved inland. Again, this kind of mirrors the spread of the disease happening from merchants. A lot of port cities in Europe were located right on the coast. This is where a lot of trading activity took place. Therefore, this is where a lot of the disease started to spread originally. Now, as it was mentioned in the video Plague 101 that you guys checked out at the beginning of this learning activity, trade was one of the main reasons why plagues spread throughout history. The Black Death is no different. Trade played a huge part in why the disease spread and why it spread as quickly as it did. This is discussion question number 2. Again, please make sure that you guys answer each part of the question and make sure that you post your response on the Canva whiteboard link below. The next thing that I want to discuss is the course of the disease. So what happens to a person once they contract the Black Death? The plague was almost always fatal. Let's start with that. If someone caught the disease during the Middle Ages, the likelihood that they would die was extremely high. The most notable sign of infection for the Black Death was large, dark splotches on the skin. When someone was infected with the disease, they would develop these large dark splotches, which is actually where the Black Death got its name. High fever, vomiting, and severe headaches were additional signs of infection. Not only was the disease almost always fatal, but the person who contracted the disease was likely to die within a few days. The disease itself was highly contagious. Priests and doctors who tended to the sick often caught the plague and died themselves, unfortunately because there was a lack of medical knowledge, another factor mentioned in the video Plague 101, that contributed to the spread of disease. Historians believe that 25 million Europeans, which is roughly a third of the population living in Europe during the late Middle Ages, died because of the Black Death. Now, the Black Death didn't only affect Europe, it affected Central Asia, Northern Africa, and the Byzantine Empire as well. The disease itself actually originated in China and made its way to Europe through trade routes. In China, the population dropped from 125 million people in the 1200s to 90 million people in the late 1300s. That difference of 35 million people has to do with the bubonic plague and its lasting impact. On this next slide, you will see discussion question number 3. Please make sure, again, we answer all parts of the question and use Canva whiteboard to post your response. To wrap things up for today, we are going to discuss the effects of the Black Death, what kind of impact they had on society, and how people felt about the disease as it was spreading throughout the continent of Europe during the late Middle Ages. Now, people's response to the plague actually varied. First, we are going to talk about the most common reaction that people had to the disease. The most common reaction people had to the disease at the time was that God was punishing them for their sins. As we've mentioned before, Christianity was one of the very few things that tied Europe together during the Middle Ages. Religious beliefs of people is what religious beliefs are what people used to try and explain what was happening to the Black Death, or with the Black Death. Some people who believed this theory resorted to beating or harming themselves to try and avoid punishment. The hope was that they would punish themselves and God would spare them as a result. Some people turned to witchcraft and attempted to use magic to cure themselves. Some people blamed the Jewish population in Europe. People blamed the Jews, claiming that they were poisoning the wells. This added to the anti-Semitic feeling that was already existing in Europe. The last few bullet points that we are going to discuss today will look at how the disease impacted society specifically. With the very large loss of population, again, about a third of Europe's population was killed by the Black Death, the plague brought an end to the manorial system. With so many deaths, those who survived could demand higher wages, so peasants who were surviving after the disease ran its course through Europe from 1347 to 1351 were able to demand higher wages because there were less workers. Many peasants, as a result, moved to cities and became manufacturing workers. Land was left vacant, and it was bought by wealthy people, reorganized. It did make estates more efficient, but society certainly changed because of the Black Death. There is one more discussion question that you guys need to make sure you answer all parts of and use the Canva whiteboard link below to post your response. Please be aware that there is a different Canva whiteboard link for each one of the discussion questions. Make sure you are posting your response to the question attached to the correct link. If you guys have any questions or concerns about what we've learned with the Black Death so far, please make sure that you reach out to me. I will be happy to provide any assistance. Have a great day, you guys. I'll see you in class soon.